Confirmation bias. We favor our existing beliefs. We're diving into the world of confirmation bias. It's a natural human tendency where we tend to notice, focus on, and trust more of the evidence that fits with and confirms our existing beliefs. In other words, we actively seek and assign greater value to information that confirms what we already think rather than being open to new ideas. Consequences of confirmation bias. Why does confirmation bias matter? Well, it leads to poor decision making. If we only select information that confirms what we already believe, we're essentially wearing blinders. We'll never see the real picture. Confirmation bias also affects our relationships. Our first impressions cause us to selectively attend to others' subsequent interactions. Once we have certain expectations about a person, we tend to reinforce these beliefs through our interactions with them. Let's look at some real-life examples of confirmation bias. We tend to trust someone more if they're an authority figure. Assuming someone's profession based on their gender. Giving more weight to the first piece of information we hear about a topic. Let's see a few types of confirmation bias. Anchoring bias. Anchoring bias is a big one. When we're making plans or estimates, we interpret newer information based on the first piece of information we received, which becomes our anchor. This can skew our judgment and prevent us from updating our plans or predictions as we should. Bandwagon bias. Bandwagon bias is all about doing something just because somebody else is doing it. But remember, what works for others may not work for you. Survivorship bias. Survivorship bias is a tricky one. It's when we focus on successful individuals and ignore the bigger picture. The idea that a high percentage of successful startup founders dropped out of school is a common misconception that is anchored on survivorship bias. While there are some well-known examples of successful entrepreneurs who left college to pursue their ventures, such as Steve Jobs of Apple, Bill Gates of Microsoft, and Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, or Meta, they are the exceptions rather than the rule. The actual percentage of successful startup founders who dropped out of school is quite low. According to research, the vast majority of successful entrepreneurs have completed at least a bachelor's degree, and many have advanced degrees. Entrepreneurship is a diverse field, and educational backgrounds vary widely among successful founders. Gender bias. Sometimes, only those who succeed are visible. Gender bias is another common form of confirmation bias. We often assign specific behaviors and characteristics to a particular gender without any real evidence. For example, assuming someone's profession based on their gender is a classic example. And it's not just limited to professions, it affects medical diagnosis as well, and a lot more. Let's look at group attribution error. Group attribution error is when we overgeneralize how a whole group of people will behave based on an interaction with just one person from that group. It's important to remember that individuals are not always representative of the entire group. Let's revisit confirmation bias once more. We have a tendency to notice, focus on, and trust evidence that fits with our existing beliefs. We actively seek and value information that confirms what we already think. So what's next? We are going to take a deeper dive into a bias that particularly affects storytellers, confirmation bias. Stay tuned to learn how it impacts the creative process and how to overcome it. Get ready for an exciting journey into the world of unbiased storytelling.